Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. Crime Dog makes it to the Hall of Fame. And now the best part about this is I don't have to see Rick Curdy rant about Fred McGriff. But that said, okay, let me go ahead and introduce our crew tonight. We have a loaded broadcast. Don't ask me to summarize what we have on tap. I encourage you to listen and watch. And just so you know, you can listen and watch by that this show can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcast. So let me repeat that back to you again. The show can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. It can also be seen on the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. Easy way to get to that is go to youtube.com, hit South Florida Tribune, hit subscribe. You're good to go. Then you get to see everybody here. And I'm wearing a baseball hat. I don't know if it comes on the camera well enough, the Baseball Hall of Fame. And if there's ever a time where I wear a hat which is appropriate to a show, this is definitely it. And I have a feeling that Mr. Crime Dog will be able to get all the hats he wants now that he's going to have a date there this summer of 2023. With that said, I'm going to introduce my crew. We have a lot to get to. And of course, following 186 Baseball Talk, Rick Curdy and I go over to Fire Up Wisconsin, where Candy Ebling, Eric Katz join Rick and I, and Brett Gardaby will be on as well. So we have a jam-packed show on the Wisconsin side. All right, well, Rick Curdy, welcome back.
Thanks, Scott. Glad to be here.
George Eichhorn, again, 2 in 2 days. Welcome back.
Nice to be with you, Scott, and guys. Looking forward to it.
And Jordan, well, Sports Scoop. Of course, Scoop is the most popular name on the planet when it comes to everybody. Actually, I have the people call me Scoop in another lifetime, but let's face it, I haven't gone to the expense to put it on a lot of different things like other people make it. But nevertheless, Jordan, I've read your writing, and Sports Scoop definitely justifies everything you do because you are awfully good. Welcome back.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I enjoy reading your stuff. Folks, if you haven't read Jordan Long's stuff, go out there. You want to educate yourself and learn about sports. This guy will definitely make sure that you get educated in a lot of good ways. All right. Well, as I mentioned moments ago, we have a loaded show, and I mean loaded. Well, with that said, might as well lead it off with Fred Mc Griff, Hall of Fame. Tom Lasorda once told me because God delays does not mean that God denies. How many games couldn't McGriff play because of work stoppages? Think about that for a moment if you ever question why this guy shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. But I'll give you some major numbers, and I'll let my guys formulate their opinion. And if you want to email us your comments, feel free to do so at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. And if I see any of your comments on here, I'll bring them on a future episode and put them out there. And if you come up with some really good ones, you'll be invited to be a guest on the show as well. So make them good, make them thorough, give me a reason to invite you, and then you get to have your old face stamped with the rest of us. With that said, the numbers on Fred McGriff are simple: 5-time All-Star, 3-time Silver Slugger, 493 home runs, would have been 500 if he didn't have the work stoppages, 1994 All-Star Game MVP, 1995 World Series champion. So you have a World Series guy in the Hall of Fame. Rick, I have no choice but to go ahead and lead off with this one with you. He has to lead off. We know is a synonymous term in baseball in more ways than ever. Okay. Well, Rick, for the longest time, you've been saying, okay, Fred McGriff belongs in the Hall of Fame. At least the best part about it, as I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, you can't say and make a case for him because evidently the committee did do it for you, and now he's in there. So go ahead, Rick.
Finally. I've been saying this for eons and eons and eons. Every time they talk about Barry, stupid idiot Bonds or Roger Clemens or anybody, and I'm like, Fred McGriff needs to be in the Hall of Fame. My goodness gracious, what do you have to do? Almost 500 home runs. He led both the American League and National League in home runs, so he can play in both leagues. He's won Gold Gloves, one of the best defensive first basemen, most underrated, most unappreciated superstar I ever saw. The guy was just consistent. He was quiet, no scandals, no reports of reporters not liking him. Just went out there, did his job. I think for 7 years in a row, he had over 30 home runs. The guy's a class act. And finally, he's in the Hall of Fame.
George?
Yeah, I jumped on his bandwagon a year or so ago. I think that Rick, you summed it up. I mean, a class act. I mean, really, the teams that he's been with, his performance on and off the field. I mean, very clean, good guy, good in the locker room, good teammate to have around. Yeah, I mean, he won one World Series, could have won more, but he was just a great player. And it took a long time, and that's what's happening is some of these guys are overlooked. And I mean, there's always a little bit of dissension among the ranks. Like Jack Morris's ERA was too high. Should he have been picked? People in Detroit complaining about Lou Whitaker not getting picked, but Crime Dog, you got it, baby. You deserved it, and congratulations.
Jordan.
It's way long overdue. I look at it. Can you tell baseball without him? No, you can't. Simply put, Rick Curdy pretty much laid it out. He almost had 500 home runs. He would have had 500 plus if not with the work stoppages. Definitely a guy that should be in the Hall of Fame. I'm just surprised it took this long, but definitely deserving in the Hall of Fame because of the way he played the game.
Well, I'll say this. Jack Morris and alantrammel helped him out a little bit in San Diego. They obviously voted for him, so they got a little help from Motown. Now, the only thing I'd like to see is Don Mattingly get in. I think he had 8 votes, so he came up short. We'll find out 3 years if Don garners enough support to get there. But taking nothing away from Fred Mc Griff, it's long overdue. I don't care what anybody says. Work stoppages, he makes 500 home runs. He's in there way earlier than he has, but nevertheless, he's in there. He's alive. He can appreciate it. I look forward to seeing his speech out in hearing his speech next summer in Cooperstown. As I mentioned, a lot to get to tonight. Next topic here is the Marlins are not, and I repeat the word not, open to trading Cy Young Award winner Sandy Alcantara. Good. I'd like to think you're going to give Skip Schumacher his ace, okay, and hopefully the Marlins will make some upgrades so that they can make the team a lot more competitive under a newer voice, a younger voice. I think Don Mattingly did the best that he could do over there with what he had to work with, a team with a very small payroll for sure. And he made the best of a tough situation. Obviously, Don Mattingly will go down with the most wins in Marlins history. But Sandy Alcantara is a stud. If this team ever got rid of him, I predict they're going to get 5,000 to 7,000 a game. But I don't think they're that stupid. I would hope and pray that Bruce Sherman, Kim Ng, and company will be able to go out there and field a competitive team. But yeah, Sandy Alcantara is a stud, and I'm glad that he's going to be returning, and the Marlins are not going to trade him. That doesn't mean they won't trade some of their other pitchers like Pablo Lopez, who they could probably find a bat or two for. I understand that, but we'll focus on Sandy Alcantara. Okay, Jordan, obviously you're the scoop of the group here. Some thoughts about the Marlins not trading Cy Young Award winner Sandy Alcantara.
I think it makes sense. He won the Cy Young. He's your best asset there. You get rid of him, and like you said, people won't show up to the ballpark. So you got to keep him, and they're going to build a team around him, and he'll be the ace of the staff. So it makes a lot of sense just to keep him. And hopefully he will do well for the Marlins and maybe another Cy Young, but he's still one of the best pitchers out there. So yeah, you had to keep him because, again, he was your only asset. If you get rid of him, then, I don't know where this team would be.
Well, what's good about Sandy is they retained Mel Stottlemyre Jr., their pitching coach. So there's familiarity with a guy who actually led a pretty good pitching staff there with Mel Stottlemyre Jr. As much as I hate to see Don Mattingly go, at least he kept his pitching coach there. And who knows what other coaches there. I haven't looked into it any deeper, but I know they kept Mel. All right, Rick.
Yeah, I mean, who do the Marlins have? I mean, they can't get people in there. The location's bad. Don Manley did the best he can do. A lot of people wanted to trash him. Like, he's managing a AAA team. He's got an owner that's just cheap. And there's a reason why Jeter left. It's pretty obvious now why Jeter left. You don't have to be a Nostradamus to figure that out. But he's their only asset. He's their only superstar. He's their only name. You got to put butts in the seats. I question a lot of the Marlins moves. Sometimes they're head scratchers, but this makes the most sense that they had to keep him. They have no choice to keep him.
George.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think back to when Justin Verlander was young in Detroit. Can you imagine the outcry if they traded or got rid of Justin Verlander? Now, they did eventually, but that didn't come until after the team got to the World Series twice. So I can understand perfectly why you would keep Alcantara. There's no way you let a young talent like that go that early in his career, and especially with the stuff he has. He's a great pitcher, and I think it's a wise move to hang on to him. Like I said, Detroit, that would have been such stupidity, or any other team that's got a young upcoming star like that, to get rid of him at that time. So I'm glad they kept him.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand teams unloading pitchers, but not when they're young and they're in their prime and they win a Cy Young award for a losing team. I guess if I really want to go back to a losing team, all we have to do as baseball historians realize that Steve Carlton once upon a time won a Cy Young award for the Philadelphia Phillies. When he win like 27 games for a team that won like 60, 70 games. I mean, that was unbelievable. I think Felix Hernandez in Seattle won with like 12, 13 wins. But what Sandy Alcantara has done, this guy's an innings eater. I've seen him non-Mattingly would stretch him a little bit in complete games, and I've had a chance to watch this guy. I've been like George, we were brought up with the Mickey Lolages and the guys that completed games, even Joel Coleman. I mean, complete games is an area, and that's, I don't know if we've talked about that, but that'll be a future subject here. 108 Stitches Baseball Talk is addressing complete games. But yeah, Sandy Alcantara is a stud. I like talking to him from time to time, but I love watching him pitch. He keeps his team in games. His win-loss record will be a lot better when the Marlins beef up their offense for sure. So, all right, well, you know what? I just spoke about the Philadelphia Phillies. Now we're going to just segue right over to them, and that is the Philadelphia Phillies and Trey Turner agreed to an 11-year, $300 million deal. Goodbye, LA freeways. Hello, I-95. Full no trade clause for Trey Turner. I don't know if this doesn't make the Philadelphia Phillies the odds-on favorite to win, then I don't know what will, because they're certainly willing to spend a lot of money adding Trey Turner to a lineup that has Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, and the list goes on. In fact, you know what, Jordan, why don't you go ahead and fill in the list of all the hitters for the Phillies, since I only spit off a few if you can remember them.
Well, you obviously have, like you said, Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper. I mean, you could go on and on with that team. And honestly, I think Trey Turner is going to give that offense so, more dangerous, because are you going to really want to pitch to Bryce Harper or Kyle Schwarber or Trey Turner? This definitely gives them a chance to actually win the World Series. I think what was missing in the World Series, as we saw, their offense kind of went stale after the no-hitter, and they ended up losing that series. I think with Trey Turner now, he's a guy that can drive the ball into the gap. He will get on base with, walks, as well as, hitting the ball into the stands for home runs. I mean, the guy's an all-around great player, and he's a great shortstop. So what more do you want? Like I said, I think this is going to enhance that offense. The defense is going to be much better. Phillies are definitely going to be the team to really beat.
If I were a pitcher, I would go out there and find the most potent migraine medicine on the planet, because I wouldn't want to face that lineup. If I do, I'm got to be delusional to think that I would want to go out there and face it. They just got a whole lot better, and they were pretty good with a team which was the third in their division, and still made it to the World Series. My goodness. All right, George Eichhorn, you're nodding your head now that you're talking and feed off of what I just fed you.
Well, yeah, Scott. Yeah, it's amazing. The rich get richer, huh? I mean, LA Dodgers, I don't know what's going on over there. I mean, I know they can't keep everybody, but by gosh, they only got that one World Series in the last how many years? Yeah, that's it. Philadelphia is loading up, man. It's like a murderer's row from the old days of the New York Yankees when I hear that lineup. And yeah, on paper, I don't see how anybody cannot deny them from being the favorites in the NL East. Of course, the Mets will have a lot to say about that. We'll get to that in a minute, probably. But I think that Philadelphia, like I said, they're just loading up. And again, Dave Dombrowski given a blank check practically by an ownership that loves to spend money. Boy, haven't we heard that story before? Oh, yeah. Wherever he is. And Dave is just a master at pulling that stuff off. And he follows the money trail wherever he goes as far as the ownership of a team. So Dombrowski didn't surprise me that he pulled this one off again.
Rick?
Yeah, my Dodgers have lost so many good players. I'm not really surprised. I think they're just so fed up with Dave Roberts' stupidity, and I don't blame him. And he's getting a boatload of money, a no trade clause, 11 years, 12 years, some ridiculous amount. He'll be there a while. And yeah, on paper, the Phillies are the favorites. I mean, their offense was already really good. It's got even better, and they got a great fielding shortstop, gets on base. I mean, just a win-win for them.
Well, let's stay on the LA train for a moment. Okay, the Cubs agreed to a 1-year, $17.5 million deal with Cody Bellinger. So if Treaturner leaving wasn't enough, then Cody Bellinger. All right, Jordan, you know what? Give me your thoughts on Cody Bellinger going to the Windy City playing at Wrigley.
At first I wasn't too sure about the deal, but it's a 1-year, $17 million deal. So it's basically, the Cubs are basically said, Jed Hoyer, you have a blank check. Let's go ahead and get some people. The thing I like about it is it's 1 year. You're not locked in for that long. If he starts to struggle, you can get out of that contract at the end of the year. It's basically, prove to me you can play for a year. If you do well, we'll give you a contract extension. Otherwise, no, we're going to let you go. So I think he's actually a pretty good deal for the Cubs, really.
What do you think, George?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, the Cubs are looking for some attention. They're looking for some star power. But again, I echo what Rick says. I mean, here again, the Dodgers lose another guy. I think that it was a good move. I really do. I mean, you're going to see stuff like this happen at all the winter meetings. You know that, Scott. You've covered these meetings before.
Yeah.
And these teams and these general managers are itchy to make a deal. They're trying to placate a lot of the fans who are upset back home. And let's face it, the Cubs have had all kinds of problems since winning their World Series. So I think it was a good move for them. And for Cody.
Rick?
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, he struggled so much for the Dodgers, and I think that the Cubs right now will give you a 1-year deal, kind of kicking the tires, see how he does. And if he struggles, they'll just cut bait with him, move on, get somebody else. And if he does good, we got him cheap. Let's sign him to another extension. And who knows, maybe he needed to change the scenery. And my poor Dodgers, I don't know what's going to happen to them. They're not looking very good, but I think a lot of it has to do with Dave Roberts. I think they just are sick of his stupidity and his management decision and how the Dodgers just don't want to get rid of him. So I don't know what's up with that, but good for Bellinger. I hope he does really well. He's a good guy. I think a change in scenery would do well, and I think he'll do well in Chicago.
Rick, I'm going to feed off of a couple points you made. Okay, obviously the Dodgers' last title occurred during the pandemic year. Hey, you win. It doesn't deserve an asterisk because obviously
it doesn't count.
Pardon me?
It doesn't count.
Well, don't tell that to MLB and their record historians, but they still won a title. But you're right, they haven't done it in the full season. But you see a lot of players leaving there. 111 wins didn't get it done. Now these guys are figuring, well, I haven't won the World Series. Now it's time for me to get paid. So the only thing I'll be curious about with the 2023 Dodgers is what they're going to look like, how many wins are they going to have. Let me liken it to a similar situation here in my neck of the woods in Southern Florida. The Florida Panthers went all in last year in 2021. They won the President's Cup, didn't get past the first round, and now all of a sudden they're toiling around mediocrity. So now we know, obviously, George and we know what President's Cup trophies mean. They don't mean a whole lot in a lot of cases because just because you have the best regular season record, that does not necessarily mean it translates into a championship. With that said, okay, the Dodgers won 111. Who knows? Maybe they'll fall off to 90, 95. And then we're going to find out what Rick's been saying all along. What does Dave Roberts have in terms of his ability to manage? And is this the excuse to replace him going in next year? There'll be a lot of interesting underlying questions on that. And I'll be curious. Jordan, do you have any thoughts about what I just said?
I completely agree with you because the Dodgers are losing a bunch of talent. Right. They're starting to slide. I could see their manager, Dave Roberts being fired, even though that's not his fault. But it's really hard. And I do agree with you with the President's Trophy. I mean, the Avalanche, who obviously I follow, they could have gone to gone for the President's Trophy. What they figured is, you know what? We don't need it. We're just going to get healthy and try to win the Stanley Cup, which is what happened. And I think the Dodgers, in their case, they won all these games. They thought, okay, the playoffs are going to be a walk in the park. It wasn't. They ended up obviously getting beat by the Padres, and now they're losing all this talent, and other teams are feeding off of it because they want a piece of that to say, okay, these guys are still good. They need to change the scenery, and maybe with the change of scenery, maybe they'll help another team go to the playoffs. So it'll be very interesting to see how much of a slide the Dodgers will end up doing with the players that they've lost.
Excellent point. And I want to also take it back to when the San Francisco Giants won an awful lot of games, all of a sudden there was a significant drop off the year later. Obviously, we know what happened last year. So just, so obviously teams have to, we always know that, I don't care what sport you're talking about, major roster turnover. That will always be the case. But the question is how much major roster turnover, how much of it is attributed to payroll, as well as other circumstances that go beyond that. With that said, we're going to fly across the country here over to the Big Apple, where you have the New York Mets Flushing reunion. Aces together in Detroit 5 years. Who am I speaking of? Well, we talked about it last night on Fire at Michigan. We'll talk about it again on the appropriate show, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. Justin Verlander gets a 2-year deal at $86.7 million, which also includes a vesting option of $35 million. Joins Max Scherzer. Well, you know what? And I've got some comments on Jacob DeGrom, and I've left that for a separate topic. So we'll focus on this, and then we're going to feed off of DeGrom, because I know that'd be easiest thing for us to talk about. So let's talk about Rick, Justin Verlander joining the Max Man.
I think it's great. I mean, Scherzer and Verlander, people are saying Verlander was awesome. People keep talking about, he's declining. It's probably his best season he had since he won the MVP with his 24 wins, won a World Series, getting a lot of money. It's a 2-year deal. I mean, he's like in his late 30s. Huge. I think this was great for the Mets. Cohen ain't playing around. He's got money. He wants to win, and he wants to be the Big Apple in the Big Apple. So I like it.
George, obviously we're closer to the situation.
Like I said last night's show, of course, the Tiger fans had a dream that he would come back here, but it wasn't going to happen. Right. The Tigers are too far down in development. It's interesting they're reunited, because both those guys were very well loved in Detroit, Max and Justin, and now here they're turning the corner at 40 years old and still going strong. And Rick hit it right on the head. I mean, the guy pitched his heart out this year. He did a great job coming off Tommy John surgery. JV. Obviously, I would imagine the Astros just did not want to give him maybe more than 1 year. I don't know. Maybe the money wasn't there either. But he's got that celebrity wife, Kate Upton, and they're going to the Big Apple now. And I think that'll be a perfect fit, because if she does any work still in her career, obviously New York and LA are the two biggest hotbeds for modeling and other things that she might be involved in. But that being said, I mean, the Mets are really loading up now. Unbelievable. Good to see them reunited, though.
Well, it doesn't hurt the fact they're going to have Buck Showalter as their manager, and I'll tell you, Buck Showalter's a dynamite manager. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Jordan.
I think it's an interesting pick for Verlander to go to New York. I mean, you won a World Series with the Astros, and we don't know if he had talked to the Astros or what was going on there. But I will say this, that with him going to New York, that definitely helps the Mets pitching staff. The only thing that I don't like is they haven't done anything with their lineup specifically, but definitely going out and getting a Justin Verlander, that definitely closes the gap on the Phillies, even though the Mets did win the division. But the fact of the matter is they came second. But the point is the Mets are definitely going to be there, and you need pitching to actually go to the World Series, and they haven't won it for a very long time. I know they went to the World Series in 2015 and lost that. So they're thinking that with this new pitching set, or adding Justin Verlander, is going to give you that extra to go back to the playoffs and do something.
Well, again, I asked you guys to refrain from talking about Jacob DeGrom, but I'm not going to do it now. So with that said, okay, I'm going to lead off with this one, and I'm going to feed to you guys, okay? And Vogo, thank you very much for being nice to see you participate again. So with that said, I'm leading off this time, and I'm feeding off you, okay? Good riddance, Jacob DeGrom, okay? I should use this as a parting shot, but I decided to use it as a topic instead. You get a 5-year deal, $185 million. You're injury riddled. You went on record as saying that you wanted to go to a winning culture in Texas. Okay, I'm kind of trying to figure out whether there's a winning culture there, unless Ron Washington is walking through that door, albeit they hired Bruce Bochy. And yes, the Rangers, to me, I struggle with that, because Texas was desperate to overpay this guy. They really were. Now, you weren't going to give the Mets a chance to go ahead and sign you. Then they, as it turns out, I feel they made a much better investment in Verlander anyways, okay? So to me, the way I look at it is the Mets look made out like bandits in this exchange. It's a two-time World Series champion for a titleist, injury-prone hurler. If I don't know if that was my parting shot or my current shot, but good riddance, Jacob DeGrom. Okay, the only thing you're getting in Texas is no state income tax, so you'll definitely keep a lot of that New York tax money in your pocket. And I'm still trying to discover where the Rangers winning culture is. I know they made it to a pair of World Series under Ron Washington. They had a pretty good little run there. More power to them. But beyond that, they have a brand new stadium. So somehow, some way, guys, help me out. Okay, I'm saying good riddance to Jacob DeGrom. Jordan, you're the journalist. You're the scoop here. Help me out here, my friend.
I wish I could. I'm really confused on why he's chose Texas, the Rangers, because if you're wanting a winning culture in Texas, you go to Houston.
Yeah,
Of course, Houston didn't want him, but the problem with Jacob DeGrom is he's a great pitcher. The only problem is his injury history,
Right.
and I would not have paid him that much. I might have given him a 1 or 2 year deal, but not 5. I just think it's a bad deal all around for the Texas Rangers.
See, when I asked for help, okay, Jordan, I got to turn to you and Rick and George, but I had to go here because you're right, okay? I'm confused. I've only been in this business forever, but I don't understand the logic behind this deal. And you know what? I will say this, going back to Justin Verlander. Good luck, Dusty Baker. You're losing too many good players during the offseason, including your pitching. So I'm glad you got your World Series ring when you did get it. Okay, I don't know what next year is going to look like, but at least nobody will ever come down on you again. Back to the Ranger situation again. I'm still so confused why he got $185 million to go to a place where I'm still trying to rewrite the record book on the Texas Rangers. Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, they're a good organization. Now they're in a beautiful ballpark, as I understand it, but that's a lot of money for a guy who's been hurt a lot. George Eichhorn, injuries.
Well, that's the thing with pitching. You just never know when a guy's going to get hurt, and he's already shown that he can get hurt. And you're right. I mean, Texas is not the ideal situation to go. The Rangers, like you said, Scott, haven't done anything since Washington was leading them, because I followed them back then, of course, because one of their nemesis was the Detroit Tigers in that time frame, as the Tigers were battling just like the Rangers were at that time for a title. DeGrom obviously took the big money. Bye-bye, New York, and slam the door when you leave there, DeGrom. You're getting your big contract, okay? But from a feasibility standpoint, no, I don't see it. I don't see it for Texas. I don't think that's going to lead to a major jump in the standings for the Rangers, unless they got some other great things up their sleeve in the next couple of weeks or months. But I mean, it's typical case of a guy cashing out. He cashed out his chips and went to the highest bidder, I guess.
Yeah, again, to me, the way I look at it is this is a desperate move for sure by the Rangers. And I want to flash a comment by Will Vogel, which is awfully good. The Rangers are still in rebuild mode. Do any of you guys agree with that?
Yeah, they are.
Really?
I think so. Not as bad as the Tigers rebuild, which is dragging on forever.
Right.
The Rangers are a little bit better, are better off than the Tigers.
But would you say, though, that they are in general rebuild mode for the most part? George, would you? What about you, Rick?
Yeah, I would say so, and it's a bad deal. I mean, 5 years for an injury-prone guy. He's 35 years old already. He's just inconsistent. When he's healthy and pitches great, he's great. But the problem is he's going to a different league. And we have seen pitchers, or I've seen pitchers or players who go from one league to another. Mark Davis. Remember Mark Davis when he was with the Padres, one of the best closers in all of baseball? He goes to the Royals, signs this big, massive deal with the Royals, and he absolutely stinks in KC, and you never hear from him again. I'm not saying that's going to happen to DeGrom, but it's different. Even Pujols struggled when he was with the Angels. So that's what I don't like about it. And one of the rumors I heard was the reason he went to Texas was because he was sick of the COVID restrictions in New York, and he wanted to go to Texas where they don't have them. That's just a theory I've heard. I have no idea if that's the case, but obviously he went for the money.
Yeah, well, again, I'll go back to what I said before. The guy, Texas is desperate, and teams that are desperate, if they're losing, are going to overpay you because they can't get you any other way. I don't care what sport you're talking about, okay? If you're desperate, you're willing to overpay, then the guy says, sure, why not play there? After all, I got to focus on my long-term security. And I'll say this about Jacob DeGrom. He did exactly that. Hey, you know what? I give him an A for shrewd. Okay, number one, he got the money, and number two, he's damaged goods. So, to me, I'll give him an A for business, but we'll see whether or not the Texas Rangers get an F for a business deal. So I don't know. Pretty interesting stuff. So, all right, I got a couple of unique off the wall topics I want to get around to. First of all, okay, the Major League Baseball Players Association opened their first international office in the Dominican Republic and Torrey Sarasota Center in Santo Domingo. And, George and I know Tony Clark all too well. I've spent time with him when he was playing with the Tigers, when he visited the Diamondbacks. But he says he's protecting the rights of all international players. You know what? You talk about finding talent anywhere, and the Dominican Republic has certainly been a good place to do it, Jordan. What are your thoughts about what you're seeing down in the Dominican Republic?
I think it's good. You're trying to expand what's, the talent there. Why not have an office there? Because, like you said, there's so much talent in the Dominican Republic. Why not see what you have down there? They could be a next star for a Major League Baseball team. It just makes a lot of sense because that's where a lot of, young, good baseball players, especially internationally, come from, is the Dominican Republic. So it just makes a lot of sense to see the talent there.
George?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I remember conversations that the media had here in Detroit with Al Avila. And of course, when he was general manager or even assistant GM under Dombrowski, Al would often talk about that baseball is waiting to explode. And we've seen that with the Latin players and the Hispanic players. So I think it's about time. I mean, let's look at other leagues. Okay. The NFL Europe, there's an office. The NBA has offices in Asia and in Europe. I think it's about time we did this. Baseball does need to expand. There's a wealth of talent down there, not only in the Dominican Republic, but Cuba and other countries as well. So I think it's a good move. I like it.
Well, you Rick?
Great move. Dominican Republic, it's a poor little country, and for some reason they have the best talent in all of baseball. A lot of Dominican players come there to MLB and do fantastic. We've seen it, and there's a wealth of talent there, and just having it there with Cuba, best players are coming from Latin America. That's what we're seeing in baseball, and it's been doing that for quite some time. And the best players are coming from the Dominican Republic, this very small, poor country, but for some reason has this gold of just MLB players that just go to MLB and just do fantastic. So fantastic move by MLB. Should have been done many years ago.
Here's another guy that agrees with you. Once again, Vogel gets involved here. I definitely agree. It's a really good idea to have an office there. So yeah, there you go. And you know what? I'll just say 5 for 5. I think it's great that you're able to go out there and put one there. Lots of great talent from Cuba, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic. The list goes on and on. Obviously
Venezuela.
Yeah, Venezuela, Caracas. As part of Venezuela. And all you need to do is look at the Little League World Series and find out where the international players are coming. And of course, we're just talking about having an office there. But if we're going to go to the depth and talk about international, how many Korean players have gone out there and play. I got to tell you interesting stories, especially since they have a couple of LA guys on. My only trip to Dodger Stadium was during the 1984 Olympics when I saw the United States take on Korea over at Dodger Stadium. And it was unbelievable. That was my only time. I'd love to get back there again. But it was neat. We could talk about Korea. You're talking about Japan. And we know that, like anything else, you watch a Little League World Series, you'll see where all the talent's coming from, in addition to what we have in the States, as well as, talent in every way, shape, or form, whether it's Caucasian, African-American, whatever the case may be. So you can get it anywhere. But I'm just really happy that Tony Clark is taking the initiative himself to have and we're bear in mind, though, that I know the minor leagues are being unionized as well by Major League Baseball. So Tony Clark obviously is trying to stick up for the rights of all players on all levels, both minor leagues as well as the major leagues. And of course, now what he's doing there is, I think, nothing short of shrewd. So with that said, one more topic of the night, then we're going to have time for actually parting shots. I know we have a lot of good information here. So, but we're going to go back in time a little bit, or a lot of it. All right. We're going to take this back to December 4th, 2007, the baseball winter meetings. Okay. Everybody knows about the old trade between the Detroit Tigers and the Florida Marlins at the time. If you don't know it, you're going to know it now. Okay. Tigers get third baseman Miguel Cabrera. Ever heard of him? Yeah. Okay.
Did pretty
A little
well.
bit.
Yeah,
He's a
little
pretty
bit.
good player.
if that isn't good enough, they also get left-handed pitcher Dontrell Willis. My God. And I believe he was a throw-in in that deal. And who do the Marlins get? Cameron Maybin, who actually I thought I hated to see him get rid of, but when you see he's get rid of for this guy, so Andrew Miller went on to have a good career. Mike Rabello, Andrew Miller, by the way, a left-handed pitcher. Let's go to the positions here. We'll talk about an 8-player trade. Outfielder Cameron Maybin, left-handed pitcher Andrew Miller, catcher Mike Rabello, right-handed pitcher Frankie De La Cruz, right-handed pitcher Dallas Treaturner, and right-handed pitcher Burke Badenhop. Well, what can I say? Baseball winter meetings, the theme. This happened, I believe, in Nashville. And yes, Dave Dombrowski, the common denominator, pulled that one off too. All right, George. We had a vested interest in that trade.
Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, Scott.
Well, here, I have to preface this whole thing by saying this, okay? I covered the Tigers my whole life, okay? And yet now, ironically, I'm part of the Marlins. So I kind of have both ways a little bit. Tigers way back then. Now I'm currently with the Fish. But, and yeah, Will Vogel, yes, the Tigers won that trade. Okay. It's safe to say that it doesn't take a rocket scientist, Will, to figure that one out. So we'll incorporate the comment because I have a feeling that's a consensus about everybody, including our resident Detroiter, George.
Yeah, Detroit thanks you very much, the Marlins management, for pulling off that trade here because Cabrera obviously is a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's entering now his final season, as he has already told everybody that this is going to be it. And then of course we know that his talent level has dropped off tremendously due to injuries and the like. But yeah, that was one hell of a deal. I remember back in the day, the Tigers had a pitcher that won 31 games named Denny McLain. And you talk about a blockbuster deal with the old Washington Senators when they pulled that one off, as you remember, Scott, with Joe Coleman, Eddie Brinkman, and Aurelio Rodriguez. But I tell you what, I still rank that one as the best schnookering job by Tigers management. But boy, this Cabrera one is right up there too.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that one up. My goodness, nobody's ever come close to 31 to win.
McLain was already almost washed up by the time they dealt him to Washington. And general manager Jim Campbell did a hell of a job on that trade. But kudos to Dombrowski, who was here in Detroit for the Cabrera deal.
Yeah, and I know Dontrell Willis was a throw-in that trade because obviously the Marlins couldn't pay him. And I think Marlins got as much out of Dontrell as they were going to get. But, Jordan, I'm going to swing it over to you.
That makes obviously, like Will said, the Tigers won that trade. I was looking through, Miguel Cabrera's career, and I forgot he was on the Florida Marlins team that won the World Series in 2003. And now I understand why he went from Florida to Detroit. And obviously got almost I'm going to call him a Hall of Fame player in Miguel Cabrera. Dontrell Willis was not a bad pitcher. He just didn't put up the numbers like he did in Florida. This is what you love about the winter meetings, though, is that this kind of stuff happens. Right. And you never know what the next big trade is going to be. But you've got to like it from the standpoint of the Tigers because you got one heck of a, player who's a Hall of Fame player.
Yeah, well, I mean, come on, Jordan, if you've ever covered a winter meeting, so I've been to a few. If you only know what's going on, I got to tell you this before I turn over to Rick. I ended up getting a baseball job out of it as well in 1987 when I landed a job with the Gastonia Rangers, and I ended up working with Sammy Sosa, Juan Gonzalez, Dean Palmer. We had a team that lost about 90 games that year, and yet 10 or 12 of them made it to big leagues, including the manager and some coaches and all that. So the baseball winter meeting, a lot of things happen. Not only do you have player transactions, but you also have future administrators of minor league teams as well as everything else, at least at the time I was there. It's been a while since I've been there now, but a lot goes on. I even try to get lots of different jobs. There was a job over a company out in San Santa Cruz, I think it was, named ATEC, Athletic Training Equipment Company, which I would have been a field representative. Never went to fruition, but I was actually pushing hard for that job, but it never came out. But, again, you make a lot of contacts in an environment like that. You never know where they're going to end up. But, yeah, Rick, why don't you give me your recollection of this trade and how that one worked out?
Usually you don't want to trade all those players for a couple back, but none of those guys, not one of them. Maben, yeah, he did okay, but the rest, what happened to them? They just disappeared. So obviously the Tigers won that trade, and we see a lot of bad trades. I remember the Dodgers traded got Delino DeShields for Pedro Martinez. That didn't work. That worked out pretty good for the Expos. How about Jim Fregosi for Nolan Ryan? I wonder who got better part of that deal. So we see this all the time. And Cabrera is probably like one of the greatest right-handed hitters of our generation, up there with Pujols. First ballot Hall of Famer. Dontrelle Willis was already like done, and he was, like you said, the throw-in, and all the rest, except for Maben, he did okay. All the rest, I have no idea who they are. I don't even know what happened to them. Who knows? But you see lopsided trades like this sometimes.
Andrew Miller actually had a pretty good career as well.
Yeah, he did.
As for the other four, Rick, yeah, you're right. I don't think they did anything that was really overwhelming at all. But Andrew Miller and Cameron Maben were the two of that six. But when you're getting Dontrelle Willis, essentially, and Miguel Cabrera for what? To me, Cameron Maben and Drew Miller, it's a different situation altogether. So, yeah, I mean, again, the baseball winter meetings, a lot can happen. George, I loved your example about the Tigers unloading Denny McLain. Yeah. We all know what happened with Denny, after his baseball career. A lot of it wasn't good. I'm not going to get into details on knock the guy, but he does own a record that I don't think will ever be broken. Nobody will ever touch 31 wins in this season, so I'll give him that much for sure. So, with that said, to me, we've covered everything I have set on the agenda. So we do have time for parting shots. Rick, lead off.
Well, I brought this up earlier, but I'm a Dodger fan. I'm from Southern California, and I'm just shaking my head right now. They're losing so many players, and I don't know what's going to happen to them. They might be rebuilding. Who knows? I have no idea. But they had 111 wins. We'll see what they do, but they're losing a lot of pop there. Pretty much, I blame Dave Roberts for this. I'm sorry, but he's just done some incompetent moves. Friedman, for some reason, I don't know what's going on, just wants to keep him. I've been trying to push for Mike Scioscia to come to the Dodgers. Maybe he's not interested. I have no idea, but not a surprise to see all these Dodger players leave. I think they're just fed up. We won 111 wins. We set all these records, and we got bounced in the first round. We're embarrassed, and it's just the incompetency of Dave Roberts. So I'm still going to be a Dodger fan, but I'm really quite nervous for next season. So we'll see what happens. And for the Treaturner and Bellinger, I wish them nothing but the best. They're both great guys. So, and I don't blame them for leaving. I would have left too, to be quite honest.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, George, from parting shots.
Well, again, my complaint with the Contemporary Era Committee, or whatever they're called now, for the Hall of Fame, as they again neglected my boy Lou Whitaker. Sweet Lou Whitaker, one of the best second basemen. Great combination, Whitaker and Trammell. And you're right, Scott, you said earlier, I mean, it was great to have Trammell and Morris on the committee, but obviously the nomination process took place beforehand, and Lou didn't even make the finalist, which included guys like Bonds and Schilling, and as we know, McGriff, who deserved it, Dale Murphy and Mattingly and other guys. But I'm just very disappointed in that committee and whoever did the voting to bring these to the light of this committee, that Lou Whitaker again was bypassed and now has to wait another 3 years. And I don't even know if that's going to matter, because his time is dwindling to try to get into that Hall of Fame, and it still bugs me. I'm sorry.
Don't apologize. That's why it's a parting shot, George.
I agree.
Yeah, true.
Okay. I mean, that gives you a chance to say whatever you want, and with that said, I'll turn it over to Jordan.
So my parting shot's going into college football. Finally, CU has been talked about. Colorado University for the first time in 10 years. Deion Sanders finally agreed to come to be our coach, and he's really turning the program around, even though that he's only had his in his press conference to say that he is the new coach. But The thing is, though, I want results. We haven't been good since 01 when we went to the Fiesta Bowl, although I still have a gripe about that year because we beat Nebraska once, who ended up going to the BCS title game. And that year we probably should have either played Nebraska in the Fiesta Bowl or gone to the national championship game. But either way, though, this is great news for CU. I really hope that Deion Primetime Sanders, makes the program into a winning program. We haven't had a winner since, I want to say, 2016 when we went to the Alamo Bowl and we were only 4-12. This year we only won one game. If he even completes 6 wins this year, that'll be a success.
Well, I like all of them. First of all, I'm glad Bonds, Schilling, Clemens didn't get in. Schilling can't keep his mouth shut. Should have stayed on the writer's ballot. He probably would have gotten in because it didn't get any better with the committee this time. Bonds and Clemens, guess what? Cheaters aren't going to get in no matter who the heck is voting. Item number one. But my real parting shot of the night goes to Tampa. Okay. And the Tampa Bay Rays are looking at a stadium site around Tropicana Field. How on earth, in anybody's right mind, would you consider putting the team back in St. Petersburg around an area that can't draw in the first place? Are the amenities going to be that good, okay, for you to continue to play right down the road? No. If you're going to keep a team in St. Petersburg, it's got to go to Tampa. Maybe the Rays couldn't get a good deal in Tampa. I don't know. But if all I can tell you is if the Tampa Bay area is going to survive Major League Baseball, they need to do it in Hillsborough County, not Pinellas County. Because, the reality is it's been a complete, absolute, colossal failure in Pinellas County. It has. So I hope cooler heads prevail, and I hope the Rays ultimately land in Tampa. But then we're talking the Tampa, St. Petersburg area where if you can get it wrong, you're going to get it wrong. And it's unfortunate because I do believe that the Tampa Bay area can support Major League Baseball. I really can. You have a great fan base there. They've proven that they can support other sports in Hillsborough County. If you want to question me, tell me how the Tampa Bay Lightning are doing. If that isn't good enough, tell me how the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are doing. Okay, I don't classify Florida State League or any of that. That has nothing to do with it. But the Lightning and the Bucks are doing well in Hillsborough, and the Rays are floundering in Pinellas County. So please get a stadium built in Hillsborough County if you want Major League Baseball to succeed. Otherwise, it will be an absolute failure. That's it for me. So with that said, great show tonight. Obviously, in a few moments, Rick and I will go over to Fire Up Wisconsin. So Rick, why don't you go ahead and let everybody know how they can get a hold of you?
You can find me at my website, www.charlottebats.com. We have a petition on there to bring Major League Baseball to Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm on Facebook at Charlotte MLB. I'm also on Charlotte Bats Baseball. I'm on Instagram at Charlotte Bats. I'm on Twitter, Charlotte Bats Baseball. And I'm also on LinkedIn under Rick Curdy. And if you have any comments or questions, you can email me at cltbatsbaseball@gmail.com.
Okay, Jordan.
You can find me at Sports Scoop on Twitter. For the Sideline Sports Network, I'm on during the NBA season on Mondays. I'm on Megan Price's NBA Carousel. Obviously, Tuesdays here on 108 Stitches with you guys on the South Florida Tribune. On Thursdays, you can find me on the NFL Carousel, which is Alex Fleming's NFL Carousel, hosted by Eric. And that I represent the Denver Broncos. And then you can also find me on my blog that I write Mondays through Thursdays with podcasts on Fridays at sports-scoop.com.
Well, George, you have a book.
I got a book, Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air. It's been out for a few years, but it's still a great buy. Learn all about the history of Detroit and Michigan broadcasting. Scott is in the book. He's interviewing Muhammad Ali and Jimmy Connors. And there's a link to my book on the South Florida Tribune and the Motor City Tribune website, as well as you could also go on to Arcadia Press, who's the publisher of the book. You can reach me at Yahoo at gicorn@yahoo.com. You can reach me on Twitter at SNG Sports 99, and you could read me in the Detroit Monitor newspaper, as well as the Motor City Tribune on the South Florida Tribune. And every Monday night, I'm on with Fire Up Michigan with Scott and our guests.
Very good. And of course, George appears with me on a lot of sports exchanges since we started the show back in the 80s as well. So we've been able to manage to put that on a lot of different platforms. And Jordan, let's not forget your occasional contribution on Inside the Pigskin as well. You're a very well-rounded writer. And I'll tell you, whether we decide to go Tuesday night on baseball or football, regardless, your ability to maneuver from one place to another is nothing short of outstanding, Jordan. So please give yourself some credit there. I don't have to tell you everywhere I go. All you need to do is subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. Then you know where the heck I'm going. But the reality of the situation is, I will say it one last time for tonight. The show can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. So if you're going out there, you're riding your bike, you're on the subway, a bus, any kind of form of public transportation, maybe in your car with your earphones on, feel free to tune us in and go ahead and listen to us audio as well. So, again, our goal is, if you can't reach out face to face, we certainly want to make sure that we impact your day in a positive way. So our website's www.southfloridatribune.com. You can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. My Twitter information is at Tribune South. And we also have a secondary account, Tribune City, which represents the Motor City Tribune as well. So again, you have us on YouTube, South Florida Tribune. Go search over there, subscribe that way. Or as I mentioned on the audio side. And kudos to Candy Ebling, does an outstanding job, not only in the field, taking pictures, but this woman here puts all of her shows up, the content. And now she has a place on Sideline Sports where she's involved with 3 Chicks in a Pod, Chicks and Salsa, and does a lot of, and fills in for me when I'm not available on our particular streams as well. So, she's become a very well-rounded individual and a tremendous asset to what we're doing. Guys, I can tell you what, man, I had a lot of subjects. I thought we were going to hit the hour mark, and I'm glad we are short of it, because you know what? To me, it's good that we can talk about a lot of subjects and keep our comments where we're able to say what we want to say, but be able to move on nicely. So that's a credit to my incredible 3 teammates here on the broadcast. You, Rick, George, Jordan. I know what I get out of you. Nothing short of an A1 as far as a grade. So you guys were fantastic. Hope you enjoyed this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. So on behalf of Rick Hurdy, George Eichhorn, Jordan Long, my name is Scott Morganrock, the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us. Coming up next on the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, Rick and I are going to move over to Fire Up Wisconsin. So meanwhile, we look forward to the next episode. Take care, and everybody be safe out there. And happy holiday season greetings. I'm sure I'll probably get that message out to you a few more times, but if we have new listeners, you get to hear it anyway. So God bless everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. Good night now.
Good night.